obviously I could stay later to make sure that everybody feels like they've gotten some good questions answered. So please hold on to your questions until the end. And Lama, if I start getting too close to kind of that last 15, 20 minutes, just jump in and be like, hey, stop it, idiot. Like, we have to do this exchange back and forth, and I'll definitely cut it where I'm at. So my goal for today is, again, to provide value. I understand it's a mixed blend of B2B, mostly B2B, and a little bit of B2C. It's very cool in terms of, yeah, like a broad spectrum of not only SaaS products and some other cool things. So I'm happy to kind of normally go into a little crowd work, but for now, let's just speed through it. When I talk about growth hacking essentially is basically this metaphorical idea of, let's say your car breaks down and there's two mechanics on duty. One mechanic has read every book on fixing automobiles over the last 5 years, but has never gotten under the hood. And the other mechanic has dirt under their fingernails and has fixed every component within your specific car. I want the second person to fix my car when it breaks down. That, to me, is the growth hacker, and it comes from experience of getting your hands dirty and trying out a litany, a broad range of different tools. The easiest definition to kind of help people understand the whole concept of growth hacking is basically doing the most with the least amount of time and money in order to get the biggest results. This is especially powerful when it comes to startups because, for the most part, all of us are bootstrapped. All of us are really tight on budgets and resources. So how do we play ball in a system that isn't really catered to people without money? I want to show some quick wins. I want to give you an idea of what that looks like, and hopefully we can kind of learn some things together. The last little kind of theoretical thing I'll give you is marketing is all about systems. So if you think about marketing in the form of like nothing is really an island, all of these little nodes here are basically a representation of different competencies within marketing. So if you understand how to do content really well, you can start applying all the learnings to every little piece of marketing. And that's actually how I got started. I started making great content 10 years ago and realizing, oh, SEO isn't that far off from this. And the more you learn, the better you get. So it's all really, again, about doing the work and getting an understanding. Cool. So this is where I'm going to go into a ton of different tools. We're recording this so people can, of course, watch later. I move really fast. So if you didn't pick up on something, I'm sure we'll be able to get the video out to you. But I'm going to cover a ton of different tools, so just bear with me. So the first concept here is the Pareto principle. This is basically that 80-20 rule that we often hear about, and it's basically saying 20% of your efforts get 80% of the results. And honestly, I see this across content all the time. I see this across the way that I do sales. There's so many different instances where the 80-20 rule becomes very apparent. I run a marketing agency called Clint Marketing. And I often actually see that 80% of my work is going to 20% of my clients. It's always this kind of crazy balance. So we have to figure out what is the stuff that we can do that will get us the biggest effect. And especially early on, what can we really start to facilitate, or at least think about, in a long-term strategy and also short-term. One of the most important things that I have trouble with when trying to explain what I do to founders is why certain things matter over others. Our biggest focus as founders should always be KPIs, so like revenue. What are we doing in order to either build up the amount of customers to eventually close them, or build up a customer list, or something that we're able to convert people later? That should be our core focus. The last 3 startups that I've been at, I've had some pretty egotistical founders. And the reality is they're like, why aren't we posting more on Facebook and LinkedIn? It's like, well, if you look at the amount of actual conversions that we have on those channels, it's a % of a % of a %. So this was like a screenshot of all of the conversions by channel, and I was getting 1.4% of my conversions from LinkedIn. And the reality is I should be doing then 1.4% of the efforts on that channel. Something to think about. In terms of being able to measure how far you've grown, as somebody that's running a SaaS product for architects, I can tell you that investors always want to see something in the way of growth in the form of numbers, metrics. So it's always imperative that we're making sure that we're tracking every single bit of this, and even the stuff that's hard to see in terms of backlinks and keywords and ranking on that type of level. I use Ahrefs, but everybody kind of has their own go-to tool. I think the first thing that I always kind of lean into is content, because everybody understands content. We've all seen it, we've all engaged with it, whether or not we realize it. Everything that exists online is, in essence, content. And so this is an interesting quote that comes out of a television show back in the States, but it's basically never half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing. The point behind that is, what can we do to really put in a big amount of effort in a single piece of content in order to potentially get a ton of traction? And I'm hoping or assuming that a number of people in here have seen Dollar Shave Club. Dollar Shave Club had this viral ad that ended up getting ungodly amounts of views and traffic eventually, but this single ad, and I normally would show the video, but we're kind of pressed on time, ended up producing basically enough customers so that these guys got acquired by Gillette for the tune of $1 billion with a B. So 3 years after starting the company, this guy made $1 billion, and it all really started with a nice viral piece of content. And there's tons of examples of this. I call it workhorse content, but this is another one. This is a company called When I Work. When I Work, let's not do it in that window. When I Work was a competitor to one of the first companies that I worked at here in Denmark. They're like an hourly worker software program. And while they have removed the view count, this thing was up to 3.5 million views. What you'll see is it's just a really, really long article, super long. And I think you'll see this if you really focus in on content, that generally you'll have one piece of content that pulls kind of the whole wagon for quite some time. For me, it's been, mostly listicles, but I'll go into that in a bit. So in terms of the way that we come up with great ideas, it's unfortunate, but it's reality. We fucking steal them, right? So Brian Dean of a website called Backlinko came up with this really interesting idea called the skyscraper technique, which is basically we try to find the best content amongst any of our competitors where they're ranking for the most amount of keywords that's related to our niche, our target audience, and we make a longer, better, more interesting version of it. This comes from like the old days of New York City where everybody wanted to have the tallest skyscraper in New York because it's bragging rights. The reality is if you're able to make a better piece of content compared to your competitor's best piece and ultimately start stealing their keywords, it's like taking their best player out of the game and making them play for your team. And so the way that we do that is we can go into tools like Ahrefs or Moz and find top content. Within top content, we can basically export every article that's doing really well in terms of referring domains and then social signals. Social signals give us an indicator that, hey, this piece caught on one channel or another, therefore it is battle tested and a viable way of actually getting people to engage on a piece of content. So that's one way to think about it. The other way is going off of user intent. User intent is basically the things that we search for that are broken up into a few different pieces. So half of all Google searches nowadays end in a 0-click, meaning you search for, let's say, the capital of Denmark, and you see, oh, it's Copenhagen. You don't actually click onto the first search result and then look into it. So we have to figure out what are the things that people are searching for that are the most interesting to us that will result in a buying decision. So the two that I really focus on are down at the bottom, which is commercial. So that means somebody is loosely interested in the idea of, I guess, perusing or looking through searches that might end up indicating that they're interested in buying. So the reason that somebody might look up Star Wars posters, yeah, it could be that they want to check out the latest posters, but ultimately I think that there's an indicator there of a buying interest. The most interesting thing for me is transactional. Transactional means they have their wallet out and they're ready to buy. So if somebody looks up car insurance quotes or they look up pricing for whatever the service is, that means that they're probably going to buy within the relative near future. And so we have to consider that as an indicator and start building content around that in order to scale in the future. Some of the quick things on content, I always get asked, how long should a blog post be? Fucking forever, right? It needs to be super long, which is counterintuitive because we always think like, oh yeah, that's 700 to 1,000 words. No. If you look at some of the graphs that are out there and it's continuing to perpetuate throughout the market, it's basically longer blog posts, 3,000 plus words get not only more shares on social media, but they also get more backlinks. Backlinks are basically where somebody points from your website, from their website to your website. And that is a huge indicator of boosting authority, but also helping you grow as either a subject matter expert in your niche or a recognizable quantity within your niche. I think I've kind of covered a lot of the stuff within SEO, and I love SEO. It's kind of my jam, but in essence of saving time, I want to move on. I've kind of talked about lists or listicles. It's a list and an article combined. I found that people engage with these the most. I think guides are super interesting, but this has been kind of my go-to and what I do for clients over at my agency, Clint Marketing. So they're evergreen. They tend to be easy to update. It's just an aggregation of a ton of different things. So like the post that I have linked up here, the 50 best startup cities in 2019, that was for my last company, Valuer.ai. And basically I had an intern come up with 50 random cities that she thought would make sense to be the top 50 cities. There wasn't a ton of, let's say, research behind it, and that thing went live and went super viral. We had the Prime Minister of Finland retweeting it. It was unreal. And you know, when people would ask, like, how did you come up with these cities? We would say, well, we put it through a couple of different algorithms. Like, the reality was, like, I don't know, we picked shit out of the air. And people engaged with it. So I think if you were to try to do something with your own brand or your own company, there's so many different ways that you can build listicles and different articles that are basically just long form lists. I think it's super interesting. Last little bit is really trying to get better at creating blog titles, because you really have just that fraction of a second when somebody sees it in order to get them to engage. So this is a screenshot of a title generator. And there are tons of them. My favorite is SEO Presser, but if you Google search blog title generator or email subject line generator, which are a ton of fun, you end up finding that there's a ton of different ways to kind of frame the article so that people might be more likely to engage. Something to think about. This is a screenshot of when I was actually doing a presentation over at Google, and I asked the audience, what do you guys sell? And somebody's like, t-shirts. So first thing that comes up here is 5 things nobody told you about t-shirts. And I was like, oh shit, like that's a really good or interesting sounding article. Or 7 reasons why you're a rookie in t-shirts. I wear t-shirts every day, and I would actually think about clicking on that. I think updating old blog posts for those that are a little further ahead is super important. Google basically gives street cred or a little bit of more emphasis on its search engine results for blogs that are consistently updated every 3 to 6 months. So if I see that I'm losing keywords inside of a tool like Ahrefs, I'll go in and add in a sentence or two that's related to those keywords to capture them back. And the last little thing that I'll go into on content at scale is basically it includes everything. So that means screen grabs, that means Elon Musk smoking a blunt, that means infographics, it's the whole thing. So like I wrote a really long article on innovation and included that visual there with Elon Musk. And it was super interesting because my CEO came over to me and he was upset. He was asking, do you think that that's appropriate for our blog? And the fact of the matter was, yes, it was actually pointing out an element of kind of corporate innovation and how that actually works. And if it's a relevant meme and it keeps people engaged, then absolutely. The goal is to keep people reading and engaged. Cool. So I want to go over some really fast wins that anybody can pick up and do and implement right away. So first, it's super important to continue to build up your network. I use a couple of LinkedIn outreach automation tools. Connect with me if you want to know about those. I don't know. I don't feel super comfortable putting that out to the world just because, yeah, you're not supposed to. But the other way of doing this is going back through company emails and also your personal emails and doing batch connections. you go to My Network, More Options, select your email provider, select all, remove your X's, skip the invite by email, and then hit connect. And the goal is to continue to build up your personal network. Organic reach for company pages sucks. It's no longer a viable way of actually reaching an audience, but your personal network will be. And so I've gotten actually a lot of traction as far as clients for Clint marketing by doing that. And I think it's an incredibly easy way to continue to build up your network just by connecting with people that you've already emailed or already had conversations with every 3 to 6 months. I absolutely believe in getting listed in directories and other listings. It's one of those really, really easy things to do. And basically the question is, where do people go that are already engaged or looking for things that you sell? And so like I have a client that does basically like predictive dialing software. So I want to make sure that not only are they listed on Software Advice, GetApp, and Capterra, kind of that Gartner 3, but I also want to go into other places where there's a listing of sales tools, and there's so many different ways to get some actually pretty powerful backlinks by getting listed on there. Of course, if there's startup listing websites, like I'm all about it, and I think everybody should be on Angel.co, Crunchbase, Gus. There's so many out there, so why not take a little bit of time in order to build up some site authority, but also get your name out there so people can find you. In terms of building a keyword list, so long as you keep the idea of intent in mind, I think there's so many free tools like Keyword Shitter. Keyword Tools are a really awesome extension, and Surfer is actually the free version of it that allows you to continue to build up this list of keywords so that there never is really a question as to what we should write about or what we should fixate on certain pages. It's a constant evolution of this list, but I always end up building by the keywords that are either a low difficulty or no difficulty and a high search volume. That's always going to be the name of the game. I often find that defining certain areas of my business or hitting the most commonly asked questions is always the way to go in terms of a resource or a blog, and maybe even an FAQ section. And this is kind of how I would do it in terms of building up a Google Sheet. I mark the hard words that I really want to get in red, the stuff that I feel like it is possible after a number of months in yellow, and the stuff that is just low-hanging fruit and easy to grab in green, and I can certainly show that stuff at length if anybody really wants to see it. Next thing is, if I am developing good content, I need to make it into tripwire content. The goal is that I want to constantly build up my pipeline and grab as many emails as possible for people that are surfing my website. So every article that gets a little bit of traction, captures a good amount of keywords, and starts getting something in the way of real site visits on a regular basis, I basically throw it into an Envato template. So if you go to envato.com, they have envato.elements, which is basically like you can get magazine layouts and just throw the article in there and then put it through a form that basically says, download the whole thing for free. But they already have it. It's a blog. And it's like, yeah, I know, but people still engage with this. So that's how I build up my own personal mailing list, not only on my marketing agency, Clint Marketing, but my software as a service company for architects, Architecture Quote. It's just good business. And these are a lot of the different conversion tools that anybody can use. The ones at the bottom are the most important ones to kind of keep in mind and think about if you're ever trying to do something in the way of grabbing people while they're currently on your site, about to leave, or are on a blog post that is obviously relevant to them. There's some really interesting plays with like lead ads, and I do a ton of SEM, but can't go into that. And converting on video is definitely fun, but that's a whole different ballgame. I do think exit pop-ups work, and that's still our best converting channel when it comes to blog content. My favorite is probably the one on the right. The verbiage is not ready to sign up today. Enter your email. We'll send you a surprise. And I kind of looked at it and I was like, what the fuck? Like, okay, cool. Like, I'm down. Like, surprise me. I actually converted on that one. And it's just crazy. You never know where these come from. With many tools, you're actually able to A/B test. I use Convertful, and it's definitely an okay tool in my book. So yeah, I would definitely say exit pop-ups are the way to go. Don't make it too obtrusive. Don't do the pop-up within the first 5 seconds of being on the site. Google's actually kind of smacking people that are doing that and not giving them much in the way of search rankings. So make sure it's an exit pop-up. I do think that a lot of people just get too close to the project or too far away from knowing how to optimize their own stuff. All of the websites on the right side are free, or Screaming Frog's actually a tool. But if you throw your company URL through that, your startup URL, you'll start to uncover some interesting things and see where things are missing or damaged. I get it. This is a super rudimentary way of figuring out what's wrong, but often we just kind of leave stuff and never come back to it. So I definitely recommend throwing one of those into the game and just put your URL in and see what happens. Oddly enough, site speed has been a bigger and bigger issue, and Google's all about this mobile first experience. And so what ends up happening is that if your site takes more than 2.5 seconds to load, you're not really going to rank for anything. So it's incredibly important to make sure that you have everything fixed on your site. If you're in WordPress, there's so many different caching tools out there. W3 Cache is probably the way to go. I don't know, I mean, if you have CloudFront or Cloudflare, that also works with image optimization, which is basically my next slide. It really depends on if you're on WordPress or not. All of these are great ways to compress images. I think that's what slows down most websites, is just really slow to load images. We're trying to get that homepage under 3 megabytes, which means we have to compress really large high definition images so that the page loads faster. Pretty simple stuff. Let's go into competitor discovery real quick, because I think it's incredibly useful. There's certain tools that do a better job than others. I've been playing around with a local startup here called Ocean.io. It's a nice little tool that allows me to see, without digging in too deeply, who I'm competing against, so I can get a feel for what their best content is, but also see what their backlink profile looks like. It allows me to also understand what I need to do in order to get up to their level, and I think that's incredibly powerful. SimilarWeb and SpyFu basically have freemium models. Alternative 2 is a place that you definitely need to list yourself. So there's tons of value in that. I wish I could spend more time on it, but I can't. For those that are doing like a lot of like paid ads, I would say that there's so many great little tools that allow you to discover what campaigns they're running in order to either use almost the same ad text or at least get it from them as far as like inspiration. But Big Spy is a freemium tool that I've used for years. I like it a lot, and that's for Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, I don't know. I think it's worth a shot. The other side is actually Google search. So I use Ahrefs, and if somebody ever bids on my brand, so like they'll bid on Valuer when I used to work there, or Clint Marketing, I'll reach directly out to them and say, look, I can see all of the things that you're bidding on. If you want a bidding war, I'll just bid against you and make you blow your budget within the span of, I don't know, a few days. So like, do you really want to fuck with me? And most people go, okay, no, I understand. So I've kind of worked out gentleman agreements with all of my competitors saying, I won't bid on you, your particular brand name, so long as you don't bid on my brand name, and we're good. And most people get that, which is actually kind of nice. So that's something to consider, and I think it's really helpful to know going forward. Last little thing, because I'm sure I'm running out of time, is outbound hacks. This works really well if you're trying to get in touch with investors, potential clients if you're B2B, and I think it's all about processes. So the process for me is targeting, discovering the emails, email validation, super important, and then running sequenced outreach with personalization. The whole idea is, how do we set this up in the smoothest way without as much manual intervention, so that we can just run this consistently 30, 60, 100 outbound emails every single day. So first, I want to make sure that I have an understanding of who I'm targeting. It's always more helpful to know who's bought from me before and understand the user journey of, first it went to a marketing manager or it went to the CEO first. It's almost always a middle up approach. Even though we think that the CEO is the one who buys from us, ultimately it might be a director or a head of a department that pushes it upwards, because CEOs are busy. And by the way, they get bombarded with all kinds of outbound stuff. But if you find somebody that started within the last 3 months, often that's kind of the Cinderella period of somebody's new to an organization, they want to make moves, they want to impress people. Those people are far more likely to actually buy and infuse a new product into an organization. So often it means we have to segment those people out and target them specifically. And there's tons of different ways to do it, but my goal first is to build out the job titles so that then I can start measuring kind of what is actually working, not what I assume is working. So after I kind of have an idea of the companies that I want to reach and the job titles I want to reach, it then comes down to let's use either an automated tool or a manual tool to kind of get there. I've been using BuzzStream and Ninja Outreach for years to basically amplify my articles. So I reach out to 100 people at a time to say, hey, we wrote this really cool article, or hey, I mentioned you in one of our articles. It'd be really cool if you shared or linked to us, that kind of thing. But it also works with investors. So I want to find all the investors that are in specific VC firms or corporate venture firms or even angel investors and make sure that I have the right emails for them. The next stage after that is I have to make sure that I'm not hitting too many spam folders or bouncing. Bouncing is basically when you send an email, but it's not the right address and the email bounces back to you. I've used Never Bounce for years. I think the pricing is meh, but Clear Out is kind of my newer favorite. They had a lifetime deal a while ago. I think everybody's heard of Hunter, but it's an email validation that means you're far less likely to end up in the spam folder or get bounces, which would trigger your email to eventually end up getting blacklisted. If your domain gets blacklisted, it means any email that you're shoving out through, doesn't matter how many emails you have on that particular domain, all of those end up in the spam folder. So I buy up what I call burner domains and use those until I eventually end up getting in the spam folder. So instead of clintmarketing.com, which is my URL for my agency, I have clintmarketing.co, clintmarketing.ai, and I basically have 2 to 3 emails across each of those because it's super important that I don't burn out my core emails. And then outreach in a sequence fashion. I actually really like Lemlist. It allows for some pretty badass personalization. My next favorite would be Snovio. I think a lot of people probably know Snovio out here. It's definitely more popular in Eastern Europe. But the idea is basically we want to make sure that we're using merge fields. We allow for an unsubscribe button to be GDPR compliant. And we send out 3 emails based off of actions. So if they don't open the email, they get one type of email. If they do open an email, they get another. If they click, they might get a unique email as well. And it allows for a lot more tracking to kind of figure out what campaigns are actually working. The last thing that I'll show, I guess, in terms of like the personalization is what you can do with merge fields over pictures. And I've done this for investors where I'm pointing at a blank wall or a whiteboard and basically say, I love, and then insert the name of the company in a handwriting font. And then it says, because you're awesome, we've known about you for years and we'd love to work with you. And people are like, oh my God, that's so cool. Like you took time to write something out. It's like, no, dipshit, like it's a merge field. Like this is automatically generated. This is an example off of Lemlist's blog that basically shows you that you can put merge fields over top of something. I would definitely use this for if you have like a really core set of potential clients. There are so many great templates out there. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. I think it's super important to use stuff that works. And if you do a Google search or look up on Lemlist or Snovio's blog for templates or email examples, they have tons of great stuff. Last couple of things. CTA is super important in terms of getting people to click or engage. I use Pipedrive. I'm actually starting to lean a little more towards Salesflare just because I think it has some really nice integrations and interesting options, but you need to eventually, if you're doing hundreds of outbound emails, LinkedIn automation, and hitting it from different channels and you're getting more than one sign up a day, eventually you lose track of stuff. Like using like a Google Sheet is fine for the first few months, but eventually there's a reason that people use CRMs. So pick your poison. It all kind of depends on what you like. A few different tools that I think are really interesting. There's Streak. Streak is this really nice little Chrome extension that bothers the hell out of you if you don't pay for it, but it allows you to see opens. But more interesting, you can see when people have forwarded that email through different parts of the company. And also if somebody's reopened your email 30 times, it means they're considering whether or not they should work with you, which is really powerful to know. And I think it's incredibly useful. I use Calendly to book all of my meetings, but there's tons of other free tools out there that you can certainly find if you Google like free calendar booking tools. And yeah, we're on Zoom right now. You guys don't need that one. And I think this might be the last slide on kind of my outbound plays, but signatures actually get a lot of clicks. People are super skeptical these days of anything that comes in via email, but I always put the most popular post inside of my signature to kind of ramp up the engagement. But I also find that, yeah, people click them. So it's super important to try to add in a few social signals. Potentially there's a hack to get people to subscribe if you have a YouTube channel. So I put this little bit of text after the YouTube channel URL. It's not for a YouTube video, it's for the channel link. This will basically prompt people right away to have a little box that pops up to say, are you sure you want to subscribe? And a lot of people not knowing will be like, yeah, okay, and hit subscribe. And it's like, gotcha, you know? So it's a really cool little way to kind of hack the whole signature game. A lot of these are freemium tools that you can basically grab, and if you have, I don't know, even like an open source HTML editor, you can basically grab all of the functionality and design of the different signatures that you end up creating. I think it's super powerful and something to think about. How am I doing on time? I think I have 10 minutes, so I'm gonna pause there. I don't know, I'm a crazy person. I put together way too many slides for this kind of thing, but I'm always happy to kind of answer questions, and I know I move fast, so if there are any questions, I guess it would make sense to kind of dive into those now.
Is there anything that you kind of did not manage to talk about? Because with everyone's permission, we could at least take extra 10 minutes since we took time to introduce ourselves.
Sure.
So if there's something, yeah, maybe if someone has to really run, then let me know, but let's take at least extra 10 minutes.
No problem. So I think that's cool. Yeah, I'll do another 10 minutes and then, unless somebody has a big question, go on.
And then again, like, yes, let's take 10 minutes of Q&A afterwards, but as Tyler said, he invited you to connect on LinkedIn, and then you can, if you don't get to ask your question, get in touch with him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it goes without saying I've been in the same position as everybody here. Six-time startup founder sounds a lot cooler than it is. It means that I've fucked up and failed a bunch of times. But you know, you get a little better as you go. And so it's incredibly powerful to talk with people that kind of know their stuff. And I don't know if you can tell, but like, I dig this stuff. Like, this is my jam, you know, like I wake up early thinking about this shit. So I was like super excited to get in and do this presentation, and of course freaking out because Zoom isn't working. But yeah, let me show a couple more hacks over the next like 10 minutes or so. So one of the things that I think is super undervalued right now is the concept of watering holes. A watering hole is basically like, where do people go where they're not actually shopping for your product or service, but they're there anyways. And what I found out is Reddit is a great source for this. Quora is super badass, but there's also Facebook groups and some really interesting plays that are across like industry forums. So what I've played around with is swapping out statuses that I basically, let's just call it what it is. I steal posts from other groups that have high engagement, put them in other groups, and then wait until it's engaged enough, and then I swap out that status for either a link or something super related to my blog, my company, whatever. It's a really interesting play, and I've had a lot of success with it. And if that's a little sketchy for you, then either way, I would say Reddit and Quora are still great ways to kind of hit it. So the way that I've done this is I discover a shitload of groups that are within my niche. So this is a screenshot of collecting all these groups that were related to either corporate innovation, entrepreneurship, or something in the way of AI. And the goal is that I don't drop links in every single group, and I don't necessarily take statuses from every single group, but it's good to know that they're out there, and I can certainly play games with that. I have bought a lot of aged fake accounts. BuyACCS was my go-to for a while. You can also get them off of Black Hat World, but the idea is if you're a member of 150 groups, it looks a little sketchy, but if you have 5 LinkedIn accounts or 5 Facebook accounts, definitely go with Facebook, not LinkedIn. It's a lot easier to kind of spread it around. And so if you start to look at the most engaged posts across a lot of the Facebook groups, Oddly enough, it's actually a lot more visual with some text included along with it. The reason for that is Facebook groups have continued to penetrate our newsfeed for a really long time. And that means that if you engage on a group once or twice, it hits your newsfeed repeatedly. And so what stops your scrolling on a newsfeed is often something that is an eye-catching and kind of strange image that is usually a bit playful or funny, but always has a call to action, something in the way of edginess or controversy, and then a question that basically gets more people to comment. And so these were some of the ones that I've scraped, and I mean, it's not hard to find this stuff. It's really quite easy. So then I start building up a posting schedule using a Google Sheets. This is what I did for video for a long time. LinkedIn actually had no way of figuring out what was original video and what was scraped video. They've come around to that now, which is super frustrating, but it worked for quite a while. And I saw a lot of people that were doing this as well. So I would set up a posting schedule, and every other day I would post a video that I found off of something relevant. You can do this with statuses that you find in different groups. And then the next stage is basically we want to make sure that we tweak it just slightly. There is no such thing as duplicate content when it comes to social media as of yet, but the idea is you don't need to duplicate. You can tweak, you can change. So that means we want to change maybe the call to action. We want to change our take on something, add something, remove something. You can swap memes. It all works the same. And then after that, we want to swap it out. So once this post garners enough attention, meaning we've hit kind of that magic number of 50 to 75 likes or 50 to 75 comments, then I'm going to hit edit post, swap in the new link, let the preview image load, then remove that link, and then hit save. And basically this works on Facebook, Reddit, TikTok, Quora. Actually, it doesn't work on TikTok, but it does definitely work on Facebook groups. And I think it's a really clever way of getting engagement. And so this is what it looks like. Basically, this was a screen grab of a guy that is also a fellow growth hacker, and he was doing this for a handful of groups to test out how it would actually work in real time. And so he was seeing that Facebook traffic spiked, but oddly enough, what wasn't supposed to happen, which is an interesting indicator, is that overall his organic traffic spiked down here on the side over time. So it means that there's definitely something here. And there's definitely something to it. So why wouldn't you try that out? I think this is a great job for virtual assistants that get paid $3 an hour to basically go through, find interesting content, dress it up, put it in a new group, and then of course make sure to do that swap out of the link, or at some point make sure that it's clear that this is coming from you and it's your type of property, or it's your, I don't know, your humor or whatever. The goal is ultimately to drive people to either a blog post, your homepage, or whatever. It has to be loosely related in order for this to work. But for the most part, yeah, it's a really cool way to play games. I don't boost content anymore because it's a giant waste of money. What I have been doing is basically focused on custom audiences targeting for the people that I think would engage the most with a post. And then of course you can use Facebook's tracking pixel to find a new and interesting way of saying, cool, this is a custom audience. Anybody that's been to my website or blog before should see this on their newsfeed, as opposed to, I don't know, like all of my Facebook group followers, or all of my Facebook followers. I think when you get much more targeted with your boosting using this type of methodology, it's way, way more worth it. So there's just different hacks that I could go into for ages. And yeah, I don't know, like it's a fun play, and it also, like, I dig kind of finding these like little workarounds and tricks, and I think the more that you do this stuff, the more you realize it works. Last little thing that I'll say about this is it's so frustrating to put out tons of content on LinkedIn or any other platform that you're really trying to hit, because you never know what's actually going to work. So this is a screen grab of my most popular post that got 622 likes, 42 comments, but 39,000 views. And it's me cycling to work, which, you know, like is great. It took me all of like 5 minutes to actually, you know, take the video and then get to my office and upload. But yeah, I can't tell you, I've spent countless hours producing what I thought was great content to have nobody engage. So like there is no secret sauce. It's just trying a little bit of everything. The last little thing I'll talk about before I kind of jump back out again is the remaining 10%, I think there's a big difference between doing something that's good enough or meh, and something that's amazing. And it's usually that last 10%, whether it's development, whether it's design, it doesn't matter. We all get bored of the projects that we're on. We want to move on to other things. But I think the real benefits are in the details, the minutia. And so if you can get to focusing on something laser strong and finishing strong, I think you'll see much bigger results. For me with content, it's making sure that everything is SEO perfect, making sure that I'm interlinking and external linking. With design, it's making sure that everything might be not pixel perfect, but representative of the way that we do things and making sure that we're finding the right images. There's just a million ways that you can apply this methodology, but it's really that last 10% that makes a difference. Cool. I've gotten through a good portion of the slides, but yeah, any other thoughts, questions?
Cool, that was a whirlpool of data and information. And yeah, you can tell that you've been cracking this for quite a while. Teams, please shoot.
I have a question, actually. How to prioritize these life hacks? For example, are there any universal recipes that work best? For example, I know that SEO is very important, and I discovered that among any other channels, it works like the best. Maybe you have some suggestion or advice.
Yeah, absolutely. So unfortunately, the nature of growth hacking is throwing 10 things at a wall and seeing which one sticks. And of the one thing that sticks, it's never perfect the first time. So it's like, okay, cool. Why did that work? So maybe for you, it might be outbound emails. And so if you're automating, let's say 30 to 60 a day, and you're trying to connect with your ideal customers, and after a week of sending these out, 30 times, I don't know, 5, so like 1,500 emails, you get 2 new clients or 1 new client, and you're like, okay, cool. So I found something there, but why did the other huge group or percentage of the group decide not to engage? Is it because the copy of the email was bad? Is it because the open rates were low because the subject line was meh? So it's always tinkering, but for me, it came down to figuring out what was currently working. So if you look into like your pipeline to figure out where have the most amount of customers currently come from, if it's organic, then fucking A, all right, you definitely are doing something right. So I would say invest some more time into making sure that not only your content's on point, your conversion, like on-page conversion is making sense, it's easy for people to convert, and of course, making sure that SEO is perfect. If you're not getting any traffic to begin with on organic, then it either means that you can spend time building up some backlinks so you at least build up your site authority, or you need to play ball with stuff that's going to give you some immediate results, which is outbound hacks, or potentially doing a lot of LinkedIn automation. It just depends, and when you're first getting started, you have to try out a few things at once in order to figure out this channel is my best channel. And every industry, every product, every service is different. That's the most frustrating thing. It's not a one size fits all. I wish it was, because it would be a hell of a lot easier. But I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. And also the second question, I saw a lot of Excel spreadsheets in your presentation. Can you share a couple of them? For example, a list of these directories and another one. So you had the lists of resources.
Yes. So the list of like backlinks, there should be a post. Yeah, definitely. There should be a post coming out actually on my blog in the relative near future, but that's easy enough. You can also do a really quick Google search. I think my screen is still being shared. So like easy do follow backlinks, boom. And so 12 authoritative sources for easy backlinks, 99 plus do follow backlink sites. The key to this is if it looks like the website was designed in like the early 2000s, don't bother. Like it's not worth it. If it's in a niche that's totally unrelated to what you do, fuck it, not worth your time. But if it's about startups or it's about your niche or it's something that's fitting to you, then great. Like it takes no time to register. What I do is I create a master list and put interns on it. So like master answer sheet. So like, I don't think founders need to do this on their own. Like this is just a giant waste of time. So basically it has all the company info that they would ever need to answer on any of these listing sites. And it's like, fuck it, knock yourself out. Like do 100 of these a day. It's just like, why repeat work? What's the purpose of doing that? So this works the same way, by the way, when you're doing any type of accelerator applications, any type of grant applications. Once you've filled out one, you should keep all of those answers in one place so that no matter what, you're able to continue to just redo this time and time and time again. Our goal is to avoid doing manual shit a second and a third and a fourth time. All of the stuff that you've probably sent out in emails to customers should be put into some type of template so that you know when it's time to hand this over, I don't need to explain everything again or rewrite everything. So yeah, I hope this helps, but like, there's no perfect template for you. I would say once you fill out one or two longer form applications, then great. Like hold on to that. Keep it in a Google Doc or a Google Sheet.
Okay, thank you. This is a great tip. And sure. One last question from me. Are you doing it yourself? Do you implement these growth hacks yourself? Do you have free time for it, or you hire some people to help you?
Well, of course, I can't do it all on my own. And this is, I don't know, like so like the 4-hour work week kind of methodology is cute from like a really far distance away, but I think up close, like it doesn't really work. So yeah, in order for me to not work more than 12 hours a day, I have to offload stuff. So like once I understand the process and make sure that it works myself, I hand it off. So I have a team of, well, we're up to 10 now, but by August it'll be 16 or 17. Denmark is kind of unique because students have to get unpaid internships in order to graduate. So I basically, every time I do a process with screenshots, I build out an entire kind of set of directions. I call them playbooks so that I don't ever have to set them up again. I can say it's in the playbook. You just have to read the playbook, the playbook, the playbook. And then of course, every time that I do something manually, I make sure to either build a template around it or try to figure out how do I skip steps? How do I use the same work that I've done once multiple times? So I hope that helps. But yeah, I can't imagine doing any of this stuff by yourself. Like it's too much. Like there's not enough time in a day or a month or a year. Like you have to offload.
Okay, thank you. Great answer. Thank you, David.
Yeah, no problem.
I give the chance for others to ask.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions in the room?
Does anybody want me to do a quick lookup of their company on Ahrefs for some quick tips? Happy to do that.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Yeah. So, for example, IERP.
Okay. The name of it, IRP?
IERP. Yeah. So
IERP.com?
.ai.
.ai. Nice. All right.
It's far from being perfect. It's getting a redesign, but still, I mean, it would be good to.
Don't worry about it, man. We're all in like almost phase 2. So this is a great little tool, and there's many like it in order to basically get access at a group level for certain tools. So if you are really into a specific tool, then you can always type in group by whatever that tool is. And I think it's incredibly helpful. You didn't hear it from me because I think there's a gray area of like legality on that one, but you know, that's for you to make your own decision. Cool. So super new in terms of where you're at. I can automatically like see like, great, there's definitely room for improvement on referring domains. So building up these online profiles on websites like Angel.co, Crunchbase, what they call soft links is basically we want to build out these profiles so you can boost the site authority. In terms of, yeah, like it's super early, but it looks like you're already catching a little traction. I would imagine, given the name, you're probably just on brand-related keywords. Yeah. So like these are the brand-related keywords that you're ranking for, and no harm, no foul. Like that's perfectly fine for being this early. What I would consider doing is starting to build out something in the way of content so that you can start capturing those really tough keywords. So like, let's take an example. So like predictive software. Cool. So I would do a little keyword research just on the fly here, predictive software, and great. So it looks like there's a relatively low search volume, but I would imagine that if the keyword difficulty didn't come up immediately, it means that you're probably in a pretty good spot. If you were to say like, what are you selling? What is the core intelligence platform?
It's a sales forecasting algorithm basically. So it's yeah, it's sales forecasting or inventory demand forecasting.
Got it. So sales forecasting, because ultimately like that is like the product and tool. My goal is to make sure that I get the keyword difficulty here at 10 or below, because when you're so early, it's going to be damn near impossible to rank for anything difficult. And in terms of the global volume, I'm always looking for 300 and above. And so what ends up happening is like, okay, fine, that's a medium, but I can go in and start figuring out like, all right, like I have a field, a niche, so let me see if I can throw in a max. I have a feeling this won't work because it's super niche, but let's see. The other way that I would do this is dive into, yeah, it's annoying. So I would dive into search suggestions or questions that are always kind of interesting. So let's see, nothing. Okay, AI sales. Damn, that's it. Oh, because I'm in Denmark, that's why. So that's a good learning curve. So let's take the biggest English-speaking country. Cool, and then I'll apply, again, the keyword difficulty needs to be low because you're such an early site, and I got nothing, really. So sales forecasting. That should be a little easier.
Yeah, missing one letter in there, so maybe it might not be giving the proper results. Yeah, perfect.
No, okay, cool. Good call. Much better. So I, again, want to set the max to 10. Cool. And so now I'm looking at potentially what would be an interesting blog post, potentially questions that end up in FAQ, potentially areas that serve to be kind of sections of the different product pages. It all really depends. And so like often what I do is build out, I'll show you mine. Is anybody here a marketing agency? Because I'm going to be super pissed if I give away my keywords and somebody's like, oh, cool. Keyword research is kind of like a bit of art and science because we're trying to play with like language in order to figure out what makes the most sense. But I'll just show you what like my standard SEO kind of template is. And I don't know, like this stuff evolves depending on how it goes. But if this was loading, I would pull it up. Damn it. I don't know, there's not a big payoff for, oh, there we go. It's basically just a Google sheet that I break down like core pages, blog posts, and like interesting keywords, but I don't think my Google Drive is working so hot today. No, womp womp. I guess next time, or you know, if we schedule a call, maybe I can show you, but it just seems like my drive is really slow, so. In any event, I think it all comes down to making sure that you're organized within your processes. And ultimately, I think there's so much really interesting stuff that you can do, especially early on. I mean, you're already grabbing your brand name, which is pretty nice. And playing with any type of keyword research tool, you can start to tease out some of the low-hanging fruit. Like if you answer this question on your site, you're immediately going to see basically a search volume of about 300, because guess what? Like nobody has this, nobody has this on their site. So that means you could immediately grab this, whether it's an article or a resource, like doesn't matter. So like that's the way to think about it. Does that kind of make sense? I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, perfect. That's very helpful. If I may ask, this sentence basically, okay, so obviously needs to be put into the context of the blog post or anything else, something similar on the website. Do we need to put their hyperlink, or we just put their like kind of sentence?
Yeah, so you want to match word for word in an H1 tag. You also want to match that across the entirety of the article. Let me show you like what used to work. Well, actually, what used to work didn't work and now works again. So I love showing these guys because like I'm in awe of how well it's worked. So Talent Lift. Talent Lift is a startup that I believe is in Estonia. I can't remember. But these guys have gone like crazy in on their resource section. And so you can see that these are different resources that basically are a mixture of guides and templates. But what I found was really interesting was, oh, they've changed it. Let me do templates maybe. Yeah. So the job description, damn. Hold on one second. They've changed it. Not blog. Is there courses? It's got to be this one. So yes, so what they'll end up doing is like going all in on the specific keywords. So like the keyword for this is employee templates. So if I do control find, control copy, employee templates, they got it 6 times in a really short article. So they're really chalking this thing full of key phrases. So with that particular key phrase, like this one right here, which forecast model is best, I would make sure that it's here. I would make sure that you have forecast model, which forecast models work, which forecast model should I use. You know, like the old days of what they call keyword stuffing are over. And I'm kind of in awe of this because this used to be what would get you a manual penalty on Google, meaning Google would smack you and basically say, you can't do that, that's cheating. Nowadays, like it's encouraged. It's so frustrating. So yeah, like this is not that great of an article, but you know, you would actually be surprised. Point, yeah. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
No problem. While we're here, I just want to really drive the point home and show probably this particular page ranks super well for a number of keywords. It's totally random page, 28, but still. So I don't know, something to think about.
Multi-orders also were asking if you could run through there.
Sure.
Multiorders.com.
MULTI order.com. That can't be right.
Plural orders?
Multi-orders.
Ah, okay. This one. Cool. Interesting. I just saw somebody selling the same thing that was on Flippa, so that's cool. Yeah, and just to get a sign of the times, I think if anybody ever wants to play around with some crazy stuff, if you are ever looking to acquire I would acquire like a blog or something like that, but there's tons of like really cool companies that are just kind of giving up. Flippa is where that's at. But let's go into multi-orders. Damn. Okay, nice. So in terms of like the backlink profile, super strong within a really short period of time. That's powerful. If I go into organic search, looks like you got hit with the algorithm update that affected me actually as well, which hit actually a little earlier, but yeah, not a big deal on that. I would question why you saw that drastic of a drop. For me, it might be because of backlink velocity. That is where you get too many referring domains in like a really short period of time. And then Google basically gives you a smack. But dude, you're ranking super well, which means either you've gotten written about in some super high authority sites, or you've just really played the game right. So kudos to you. And we go to top pages and top content to dive in a little further. And so nice. So this is definitely a trend that I see more often now, as people are removing the subcategory of /blog or /article or whatever. So it's just everything is still under that same core domain, which is, yeah, your website. Smart and actually really well played. So I would say like you're in some answer snippets, which is super strong and means that like the article is actually like helpful. Best printers to print shipping, like answering questions as well. I would definitely say that sometimes it works in terms of having the entire question inside of that URL. Other times it's okay to keep it to 2 phrases or 3, you know, keeping it super short. But let's just take a look. Damn, I'm surprised that there's like a lower search volume, but definitely seems like you've done something right there. My other question would be top content. So I would amplify. I think amplification is the name of the game on this. So anybody that has a guide on something that's related, I would consider reaching out to and saying, hey, I kind of answered that question here. It would be really cool if you link to me. That way you can start building up the authority of these particular pages so that they never get dethroned or removed. But it's definitely nice that you've built up that resource section. And the last little thing, just out of morbid curiosity, I really want to see where most of these links come from because they're powerful. So you got 2 links off of Wix. Does that mean you've created a couple of fake sites? Oh, no, you're inside of the app market. Nice. Behance is always smart. Those are harder to get these days. So I guess these are kind of relics or older profiles. Okay. And you've rebranded, which I guess is where June from 2018 makes sense. So yeah, man, I mean, you're well on your way. I would say that for the most part, like super powerful, high authority, like it goes from 0 to 100, 99. And so like this goodfirms.co is one of those really great listing sites that used to be a do follow, but any startup can list themselves on this site. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that for those that have not gotten on there. But yeah, man, I think you know your jam. You know, like a review site, nice. Alternative 2 I mentioned earlier. So yeah, the problem with a lot of these listing sites is they're slowly backing off of like the, interesting, the do follow stuff. So somebody knows how to play the game. There's definitely a growth hacker amongst us. Nice, really cool.
Good job, multi-order.
Thank you.
Can we quickly run another one? If you can see in chat, it's impromptme.com. If you have time, actually.
Yeah, of course.
Just keep on worrying about our time.
No, it's all good.
But it's with I. It starts with impromptme. If you can see the chat.
Is it? Oh,
so I am, yeah. I am,
no.
yeah.
I am.
The second letter is M, yeah.
Yeah.
And .com. Yes.
This. Oh, I see. Okay. All right.
They have also a quite complex system.
Got it. All right, overview. Cool. Give it a minute. Been around for a little while, a couple of years. This strikes me as low for something that's been around for a little bit. So my immediate guess is that it's not on a structured type of site. So yeah, so a custom website, that's fine if you're really up for that, but it means that your site schema, like your structured data, isn't being crawled correctly. Like there's no reason that you should only have 3 organic keywords. with a site that's been around for like 2 years. So, you know, like there's a million different ways around that. One is you find somebody that can basically help you with the site schema. So site schema, and there's plenty of interesting, schema.org. There's interesting stuff in here that allows, if you have somebody that's in-house that can kind of help you with like structuring the data to actually get better crawled. Otherwise, finding somebody on Upwork or a freelance site would be the way to go. But yeah, your website clearly isn't being crawled correctly. So like that's probably first and foremost. I would imagine that if that is the case, then Gmetrics would tell me that your website is slow. So this is, if you remember seeing earlier, is this the same one? Yeah. If you remember seeing me earlier, I use either Lighthouse, Pingdom, or Gmetrics. And this is an indicator of whether or not your site loads within that kind of 2.5 to 3 second period. You can also get this inside of Chrome for, well, everybody has Chrome. That'd be weird if you didn't. But right click, inspect, and then performance, and then we hit refresh. And this is another way to get it. But I assume that it's slow because like it doesn't make sense. Yeah, so need to speed up the website using content delivery network, so a CDN. You need to make sure that you're optimizing the content on the pages. That means compressing the images. You got some work to do, but it's okay. The last little thing that I would say is like referring domains, like for sure. I would definitely start getting my profiles out there. I don't know, like there's so many interesting ways to do that. If your solution is actually being used by a company, then every company that uses it should put a link to your website inside of the footer or the about the event or whatever. So I think there's a lot of unique solutions, but yeah, it's early days and it's not the end of the world. It means that you need to get more content or more profiles out there to build up these referring domains, structure your data, and then of course, consider speeding up your website. So that's what I see.
Could you do a search for formaloo.com too? Formaloo?
Formaloo?
Double O.
Oh.
It's actually in Persian. Our English website is very new. Yeah, formaloo.net is in English.
Okay.
So.
Interesting. So, well, let's take it one step at a time. So like, I'll pull this into, and the tool that I'm using, just for those that want to know, is Wappalizer. There's tons of other tools that allow you to kind of see what the page is built on, but this is a free one and it's easy. Cool. So with having WordPress, I could see at the last page that the structure of the multi-lang wasn't built correctly. And I'm wondering why there's a subdomain. I would definitely, yeah, I would caution against that. So it's always better to have subcategories, but I wouldn't do that for the homepage. But if your core focus is, well, let's see what the language is.
The reason is that we have different languages, like for example, Persian, English, we are adding Arabic, Spanish. So we define different subdomains to,
yes,
not to mess with our SEO score.
Well, I can definitely appreciate the move towards that. I think that sounds like a good idea. My favorite tool as of recent, especially with WordPress, is XT Translate or Qtranslate XT. It allows you to basically just form these new lang tags. I think that if you, I can find one, so language tags. There's a lot of different ways to look at this, and there's a number of great websites that really kind of outline like the taxonomy of the breakdown of how you should do it. For me, I'm going by what is the browser setting and then tweaking from there. So that means your domain .net/en as opposed to a completely new subdomain. I have a presentation for this whole thing, but it's a long way to go to say that when you have subdomains, subdomains are treated as individual domains, like they're not ranking kind of with each other. So you're spreading out whatever goodwill or site authority that you've built up over time. And if I had, let me just see if I have my SEO presentation in here. I wish I did. Yeah, I do. Just give me 1 second. So the problem with like a lot of the multi-lang stuff is like it has changed and evolved and gotten super complicated. So a blog.yourdomain or web.yourdomain means it's treated as its own individual site, which is super frustrating. So when you switch to a subdomain, your traffic goes down. If you go into a subcategory, guess what? Your traffic goes up. The jury is no longer out on that stuff, which is super frustrating. In terms of like the language settings, I always go simple. Whatever the standard browser setting is, it needs to be a / whatever. And if the core language is kind of set up as Persian, that's fine. Just make sure that you're setting this up. Qt translate is again the way to go. It gives you the chance to decide what type of naming structure you want, and it also redirects people based on whether or not they come to like a /en link, but they actually have Persian as a core setting. So the other ones in here are WPML, which has been the standard for a long time. Same with Polylang. But if you dig into XT Translate or Q Translate XT, I think it's the way to go. So I don't know, like that's a longer scenario, but it's always good to get it like right the first time. And you know, ultimately, like it's not going to hurt you to change over now because you're not ranking for too much at the moment. So, but let's just double check before I say that. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. 36 keywords will come and go pretty quickly. It is nice that you have some pretty significant referring domains in a relative short period of time is actually quite all right. And I imagine that the reason that you're ranking is because you have multiple languages. So let's just do organic keywords. And this is kind of for everybody to understand. Yeah, makes sense. You're going to have much more traction on any other language other than English because over 80% of the internet is written in English. So if you speak a second language, there's no harm or foul in basically just creating these multi-language pages. And again, I would say Qtranslate XT is the way to go because it's open source, it's freemium stuff. So like you don't have to worry about it. It just takes a little bit of time to set up. But I hope that helps.
I think it was amazing help. Guys, get in touch. We have to start pitch training. It was amazing, Taylor. This is like the way you jump between the tools, and I think a lot of us, at least me, have never known about many of them. So it's good to get comfortable and do this, test this, and get in touch.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Taylor Ryan on LinkedIn in Denmark. So yeah, I'm happy to.
They have the link as well. So.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for having me. I love doing this stuff. I don't know. I hope this provided value for what it's worth. Thank you.
Yeah, it was great.
Taylor. Thank you.
Cool. We'll send you the link to the recording. Thank you very much for your time. It was really interesting and engaging, and hope to see you again in the near future. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Cool, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
I'll stop recording now.
Cool.